right, I will now call the board workshop for the agenda review to order. I don't believe we have any citizens with us this morning, so I'll skip that part and go ahead and turn it over to the superintendent for the agenda review.
Hi, good morning. Exciting to be here and spend the day with all of you until at least 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we have a kind of a jam-packed day, so if I can just outline the time frame and how I see this working out today. You know, we do have agenda review with items to cover from 9 to 10 o'clock-ish. At that time, while we're still on camera in this meeting, Ms. Troutman's going to review the procedure for the interviews, and then the interviews start at 10:30 sharp. So we'll probably call a recess so everybody can leave that doesn't want to be here for the attorney interviews, and maybe like 10:15-ish, so if there's a break in time. But because the directions need to be on camera, we're going to do that at the end of this meeting, take a break, and then start the interview process at 10:30, if that's okay with the board. That's how I see that working out. So without further ado, just to kind of review some things. First of all, the end of April is always one of those times where people are a little bit, they're nervous because assessments start at the beginning of the month, although we started the writing already. I know teachers and everybody's nervous, but once you turn into May, everyone has a big smile in their face, and they can kind of see the finish line as we move forward. But I wanted to remind you that we have a job fair this next Wednesday, which is May 3rd, 5 to 7:30 is our teacher recruiting fair at the TTC. We're looking forward to that and bringing some new folks into the organization. So at this particular board meeting, we have several recognitions. The first one is for the Florida Federation of Color Guards. So this is Lakeside Junior High, Orange Park High, Oakley High, and Ridgeview High, celebrating those students and their accomplishments in color guard on the state circuit. Next, we've got the poster contest for the Clay Soil and Water Conservation District. Usually about 6 students are honored. We'll have those students brought forward. Next is the Wes Whitten Scholarship. And since we have new board members, a little bit of explanation on this. Angie Whitten, who's principal at W.E. Cherry, her son was tragically killed. I can't remember the year that happened. 2008,
2008, somewhere in there.
In that range. And ever since then, she has given scholarships out. I had a board member, usually about 7 students receive a scholarship. And so Principal Whitten will be there. And of course, this is very emotional type of thing. So I'll just give you a heads up on that as we get into that. Next, we're going to recognize the State Science and Engineering Fair winners, the state winners. You see them listed up there. Next, we have a bunch of recognitions for career and tech ed. They do all of their contests around this time. So we'll announce those winners. And last but not least, we're going to hear from Brady White and the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. I just want to kind of brag on these students. There's 27 of them, and it's probably the sharpest group that I've ever dealt with, you know, in 34 years. Very, very articulate group of young people. They'll do you proud. We'll hear from the chairman, Brady White, at the meeting. So that's kind of the recognition portion of that. The first item is the minutes on the agenda. Any questions related to minutes? Next is the personnel consent agenda. One thing I would remind you about the personnel consent agenda, remember in April we did reappointments. We do reappointments each and every month as people complete their requirements. So for example, the teacher didn't do their certification, hadn't applied to the state for their certification. They might not be on the reappointment list for April, but they would be in May or June. So while in April, there's one big document and a separate item for reappointments because there's 5,000 employees. From that moment forward, so May, June, July, August, it's embedded within the personnel consent agenda. That's the process for that. Next, renewal of the physicians and medical facilities to conduct physical exams. You can see the listing there and the costs involved. You know, it's a real challenge because not all places want to do physical exams. they don't exactly think it's great business, so we were lucky enough to have 9 respond, and you can see the ones that are listed there.
That's more than we've had
More
in
than
the
we've had,
past.
yeah, yes
Yes.
ma'am. So that's what that item is. Next is the K-12 academic services out-of-state travel.
Mhm.
You can see a lot of athletics. This will be the last calendar, the AMI calendar is the next item. You can see, you know, when you're talking about PACE, FLICA, AMI, they all have different schedules, unlike the traditional schools, so they have separate calendars. And that's their calendar. Next is the professional learning catalog. You know, under state rule 5.071, each year we have to go ahead and update our professional learning catalog, or the master and service plan used to be the old name for that. It's brought to the board each year around May to be prepared to turn into the state. We do an annual review process. There's a survey that's given to all employees asking them what their needs are relative to professional development. There's a PDAC council that involves all of our employees that then make decisions about what types of courses we would offer. We also, most of the changes that you see are a result of the update of state professional learning standards. So therefore, you have to go back and update the wording on each one of those items. And that's why you see many of the items are typical courses that we have offered. And in addition, new courses for pressing issues such as literacy, civics, mentorship, MTSS, and the support of teachers are all embedded within the learning catalog.
Mr. Broski, are there things specific to new teachers without a background or without a degree in education?
There is. In fact, not only is there items in here that are useful to newbies, let's call them newbies, to our profession, but we actually created a whole support coaching position through the board's approval of that allocation. We are teacher support coaches, and we have a whole method by which we go and provide tiered support to teachers. In other words, you want to give the most support to teachers that need the most support. You're never going to have enough people to provide all the support you would like to give. So instead, you have to figure out who needs it the most, and there's a whole tiering process that we go through in which we conduct that analysis, and then we provide the support accordingly to the teachers that need it the most. We recognize that over 70% of our teachers are not College of Ed graduates. Right, so these are people where this is a second career. You have to provide those resources to them. And I would just say Dr. Shepard and Kirk Root have done an awesome job. Robin Bossinger is a great individual in that department related to this. In fact, we formed our own program with state approval in order to help people. Because one of the things that happens when you're a teacher, you get the job and you start teaching, and then they say, well, here are the requirements you have to meet. And you're like, wait a minute now, I agreed to be a teacher, I didn't know I had to do all these other things. So guiding and supporting along the way and making sure that there's a process involved where the new teacher feels supported and wanted and continued within our organization.
That's great. I think it would be easy to lose a lot of potential new educators if we didn't help them through that process. It is so cumbersome and overwhelming. They're trying to learn curriculum, classroom management, and get all of their certification things done. So.
And up to, well, I don't know if it's been passed yet, but I know there's a building right now changing it from a 3-year certification to a 5-year certification.
Right.
And there is, I mean, I learned about an art teacher who is an artist, not necessarily going through all of the teacher routine. And in the process, she's also going to be a young mother, and life happens.
Right.
So being able to allow for those 2 additional years will be huge.
I think it's
for
fantastic.
a lot of these folks.
And
because there are classes involved. I mean, college classes involved. So.
And that was my other question. How much are we able as a district to provide in-house as opposed to them having to go to a college.
There's a lot.
Well, we
From experience, I know there's a lot.
we formed our own program that's due this year. We can certainly provide more information on that. We felt like we needed to do it in-house in order to provide more customer service to the new teacher that needs support.
I think it's such a financial burden, first of all, and a time commitment. But then on top of that, I think the benefit that we could have as a district is they're not just getting training from some university, they're getting trained in the way we do things here in Clay. So their education is more meaningful that way to where their career is.
Yeah, and in teacher support, one of the things that we really worked on, we have a whole checklist for school-based support, right? Because you think, some schools, we kind of created a whole checklist of things that the school needs to do in order to make that successful, as well as things that we need to do on the district level to make them successful. We recognize the labor shortage is a real thing. It's a real thing everywhere, and it's certainly a real thing in Clay County, so we need to provide the best possible service, right? That's the plan. Okay, we're good with that one?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So affiliation agreement with with the University of South Florida. This is for psychologists, to bring more psychologists in. That's another area that there's a shortage of. Next is an affiliation agreement for hiring of heroes. This is for a military intern. Next is the comprehensive evidence-based reading plan. So this is kind of a long document. One of the things that I'm most proud of is, and it's hard to believe, but prior to 1920 school year, we didn't have the formation of an actual literacy department. Right? It's hard to say that out loud. We did, of course, support literacy, but now we actually have a supervisor of literacy. We have coaches and specialists which use their expertise to improve literacy within our county. Now, anytime that you're looking at data, there's two ways to look at data. One way is to look at it just with a raw number, and the other is to take a look at comparative data. Like if you look at student performance in reading, there's no doubt that we need to improve when it comes to data and reading. There's no doubt about that. The other part of data analysis is comparative data, right? So if I was to say to you, I got a job at a location and I'm getting paid $17 an hour, you might say, well, that's pretty good, right? If every other person is getting paid $35 an hour, it's not good, is it? Right? Or pretend everybody else is getting paid 15 and I'm getting paid 17. All of a sudden, when you compare, it gives you a different vision of the number. So when you do comparative data, Clay County ranks in the top 10 of all statistical categories and as high as third in the state in sixth grade reading. Right? So is reading where we want it to be? The answer is no. Will you ever be satisfied with your reading scores? The answer is no. Right? And we need to continue to strive forward. But if you look at it comparatively, we're doing well and compared to the other 66 counties, but still need to work on that. Part of that is also the use of MTSS, to provide interventions for students. You have to strengthen the core curriculum or Tier 1 instruction, but you also have to have various tools in order to improve and provide interventions for all students. And kind of a, I think, semi-interesting story. And one thing I got tagged with, I used the term, we are Shangri-La. Sometimes people think that if you take a student and you put them somewhere else, they will learn because you move them somewhere else. It's up to us, meaning the core teachers, to provide Tier 1 instruction that's strengthened and to provide interventions to address the areas of need. So if you look at reading as 8 different processes that a student has to be able to do in order to intertwine and make reading a holistic process, when you do that, you have to have the tests in order to determine which area there is a deficit in. You have to have the tools to address that deficit and bring that student along. So at the end of the day, the student has as much confidence in all 8 areas, so that when they combine together, the student's reading is strengthened. And I always give the example of reading's an interactive process between adults and students. If you hand a student a book and they sit in a chair by themselves with a book, they could sit there forever and never learn to read. It's the process of the interaction between the adult and the student which causes the reading process to occur. So that's kind of a brief explanation. I do realize this is a big document that's out there, and we're governed by Florida code to approve it. So.
This is new this year, correct?
Yeah, the state now has legislation. The state a couple of years moved to evidence-based reading, because what happens is there's so many people out there that claim to be experts. They go ahead and you'll see, I don't know about you guys, but I get emails, probably about 40 emails a day of people trying to sell me stuff. I'm assuming board members get that too, right?
I think I sent you one this week.
We actually have that one.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're piloting that one right now.
Very good.
So they have all this stuff, and so the state's mission in very simplistic terms is we're going to do the research on these strategies and on these particular products, determine which ones are evidence-based, research-driven, and those are the things we want to do. The challenge is, sometimes people who've done things for a long period of time want to continue to do the things that they've done a long period of time, even though it's not evidence-based. And so then you have to make that correction to say, we're no longer using this particular program because it hasn't made the list of evidence-based programs. So there's an analysis that we go through
Change is difficult.
in order to do that.
Can I add something to that,
Sure.
Mr. Brodsky? It came home when we were at Middleburg in the cafeteria. They had, one of the things that before this reading plan was required by the state, we saw the need for better reading scores, obviously. And it was interesting, the whole post-COVID thing, we found that students didn't feel like, well, I don't have to go to school. And so one of the things that we addressed last year that you brought to us was the fact that our attendance was so low. We were having major attendance problems. Obviously, if the kids are not sitting in their seats, they can't be taught, And so there was a huge push for attendance. And in the Middleburg cafeteria, there's this bulletin board, and it's like a competition between the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors and the percent of attendance. And then if teachers have 100% attendance in their classrooms at Middleburg, they provide a pizza lunch for the students. So it's like, every school that I've visited is doing whatever they can to get the derriers in the seats, so to say. And that's huge, because we can't teach unless they're there. And that's one of the things that we were realizing, that if they're not coming to school, those scores are not going to start going up. So that's a huge step in the right direction to get the students there and then to follow through with the programs. But yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So there's 3 things that we focused on this year. One was attendance. Mm-hmm. The other was student discipline and the use of both punitive discipline, in other words, consequences, as well as positive. Hey, you should make school the kind of place where students want to go, right? It's not a place where students shouldn't want to be, right? So there's a combination, if you will, simplistically, of both a carrot and a stick that needs to be applied in order for student discipline to improve. And then the third was teacher support, providing teacher supports. And so a whole slew of things go behind those 3 initiatives. But one of the things you'll see looking at school bulletins and s'mores that schools put out is that they're always talking about attendance. And so we've seen an increase in attendance because that's a focus for this particular year. We had what was called a one-plan connection plan, because as a district we're looking for a way to reconnect with our community after 2 years of the nonsense that we've dealt with in the past 2 years. So how do we connect? Well, one, you have to get in school. That's step one. Once they come to school, we need to go ahead and correct some of the behaviors that we see that are on the rise nationally. And then we also need to provide support for teachers because many of them are new to the profession that don't have the capacity and the skills sometimes. It takes time to learn. And so those were the three main focus. The fourth was kind of the sidelight, was the adaption of legislation that occurred, right? Because, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and last year was probably the most impactful legislation that I remember to the educational environment, and I think this year will be the same too. But making sure that we have all of our bases covered when it comes to new legislation was a focus of this year too. So that's really the stuff that we were working on behind the scenes. So I appreciate you noticing. Ms. Bola.
Just a quick, and it's a very specific question, so if I need to follow up later, I can do that. But I noticed our pre-K literacy rates were like 90%, which is phenomenal. And one of the big differences, I'm no reading expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've worked closely with my kids to teach them how to read and alongside their teachers. And I noticed that in the preschool program, where you have curriculum, are we doing the same K-5? Is that Orton as well?
So we have embedded supplemental resources to include components of those types of strategies when we're looking at the orthography of the mouth and the sounds, like so we have Haggerty and tools like that, or interventions that we're providing for students that are struggling are more Orton-Gillingham based.
Okay, so we're getting away from the whole language approach.
So we are moving away from, yes, balanced literacy. We've moved away from that approach. With Lucy Hawkins and those components. And that's been, as was stated earlier, kind of the struggle because those were so embedded into our curriculum.
Correct, 100%. Well, that is fantastic news. I think we should advertise that to everybody who's interested.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for noticing that.
You noticed all of the heads nodding and saying, yes,
I did.
yes.
I did. Well, I just
A
tell,
lot
I
of
can tell
teachers
you,
out there
like,
doing the same.
the program that my kids have used is Orton Gillingham program, and it's K through 5 or 6. And some of their close friends who have struggled with things like dyslexia have had phenomenal success because of the explicit instruction involved with the basic phonics for every learner, regardless of whether you're struggling or not. So I'm excited to hear that we're moving in that direction.
Awesome. You know, one of the challenges with the data for this year is that, you know, we started the first year of FAST data, right? There's a whole new system. They're getting rid of FSA. They're bringing in a new system of ways that will have accountability. And the challenge is that the test is based on all standards for the entire year, and it's given to students in August. So imagine taking the final exam on day 1. Right, that's the equivalent of that. And so it's going to take some time for us to adjust on how we're going to use that data. It would be unrealistic to think a student would be at the level at the end of the year in August, and they give them a similar test in mid-year, and then the end of the year test is what we're doing now. So all of that has to be norm referenced and validated, and they're saying that they're not going to come up with cut scores until at least October. So we're in a, I'm just trying to point out we're in a huge transition year when it comes to data and how we are going to look at that and evaluate reading and everything else as we're going to wait for that process to occur.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Sure.
This new approach to teaching reading, which is not new, obviously, it's evidence-based, but kind of we've shifted directions. How long I guess, have we been in the process of changing that in the district?
So I would say that this year has been kind of that transformational year as regards to a lot of new resources and supports that have been provided. Last year, We provided additional supplements like from phonics to reading, integrity, that were more direct and explicit instruction that were based on evidence proven to show results. So that was like the first key components embedded into the daily schedule for teachers.
Great.
This year, the interventions, and we've spent a lot of time vetting, Bianca Montoro, who was the previous supervisor, her and Robin Ray, our K-12 intervention specialist, spent countless hours vetting resources, reading the research, and determining what is the best use of our funds, that we utilize ESSER funds for, to make sure that we're picking the right tools to support teachers so they can support their students. So those interventions have been were implemented this year. It was kind of a slow rollout in getting the tools and materials, but that's been a huge shift in training and professional development. And so this year has been kind of that year of transition. As we roll into next year, I feel more confident that we've got some foundational components. Our master scheduling guidelines have now reflect these pieces, as well as building the capacity of our leaders to teach and lead this work in their schools. So this has been an instrumental transformation.
It's all about the decision tree.
So within the context, and I have copies that I'll be providing you as well, within the context of the plan, our decision trees, and when you look at it at first, it looks, there's a lot of words and there's a lot of information, but it's very clear about when you're making decisions about, students and what you're doing in the classroom, that it gives you direction on if this is occurring, this is the tool that you're going to utilize.
Oh, great.
And then if this tool is not working and we're looking at having to intensify either, because we've got, as Mr. Bosky stated, our goal is to intensify Tier 1 instruction by giving everybody the tools and resources that they need. And then also those evidence-based practices. If we find that students are not responding to that instruction, then that's where we give them opportunities to look and vet, here are the resources and tools. And then also you can reach out to Robin Ray, who is our MTSS interventionist, and she'll provide, like there's a service and support document that just basically says, I need a little more help in helping to determine like what are the next steps. So it's very clear about that pathway. It's very clear about the priorities of the 6 components of reading and what tools and resources are provided. So I'm very excited about what we have in place. It's just a volume, right? When you have a volume, and when we look at teachers that have come out of the College of Ed, I've been in education for 26 years, the Masters in Special Education. And, I think about, I had some opportunities to be educated in Norton Bellingham and Lindenwood Bell, but that's not the common story with literacy instruction in the last 20 to 25 years. So with that being said, we know that we have a huge opportunity to provide service and support to our teachers and educators and leaders, and that's our goal moving forward.
Fantastic. I want to clap. What I do want to caution the board, because we're talking about looking at data, and we obviously want to see our literacy scores improve. It's going to take time. This is a total rewiring of how we've taught reading for decades. And so every teacher who's been through the College of Education has to unlearn and then relearn. Because even for those of us who went through grammar school anytime probably after the 1970s, we learned whole language. So it's even our own education, that's how we learned how to read, so, or not to read very well. So anyway, I just want to, kind of preliminarily talk about that so that when we're looking at data, we're not expecting immediate results, because there's going to be a learning curve for the teachers. And I can tell you, watching my kids go through this program, it is so intensive, and it's hard to jump into midstream. So I think there's going to be a certain amount of remediation that'll happen for students who are 3rd, 4th, 5th grade.
So I have a question on that. Are we providing these teachers with support when, I guess additional support is what for that student that, you're talking about your tree over there, where you have to shift and do something a little different for this student because this student isn't excelling. Instead of putting them in ESE classes or extra help classes, are we able to like I had spoke to before, provide that small group, extra support for that teacher so that they can focus on individual needs.
So small group is a requirement with
Right.
respect to all elementary classrooms, that small group to work on the differentiated needs of learners within that environment. I think the challenge is when you provide additional resources, and if the resource is new to the individual, they have to kind of learn the resource and how to implement it, and that's kind of where we are now. And so when I was giving the Shangri-La experience, it's sometimes easier to think that a student goes to Shangri-La and then learns in Shangri-La. And the message to teachers is you are Shangri-La, right? There is no Shangri-La. When it comes to student learning, we need to address that issue, and that's a cultural change. That's a big deal when it comes to MTSS. And I think teachers certainly feel the change this year when it comes to that issue.
I would compare the shift in literacy instruction to what we experienced in math instruction when we went from the previous state standards to the Common Core standards, and how much of a different way of instructing that was in math and different way of learning. And or if you've ever used Singapore math, it's very different from what even I did in school. So I think that there's going to be definitely a learning curve for the teachers, the students, and I think we'll see the data improve. But I would imagine it would be years.
Yeah, just to have a uniform program.
Right.
That's about 2 years, 3 years now that we've been working towards the point where we are, and we'll continue to improve. Right now, we're in decent shape. That's why I kind of gave you the comparative data. It's not like a total rehaul of everything, because comparatively, we're doing well in the state. But still, there's a need to further what we do, because we're tying MTSS along with that, right? So there's a whole differentiated instruction program that's being introduced, and that's challenging.
And you said in October is when we would essentially see this.
That's what the state, well, that's what the state is gonna look at the data and make cut score decisions. So what the state normally does in a year in which they're introducing a new test is we'll still have tests. Students will be assessed in the month of May, right? There'll be some sort of raw data that would probably come out in June and July, but they're not gonna tell you what that raw data means comparatively to like October-ish. Like, what does that actually mean?
So are we still doing school grades and stuff?
No school grades this year.
No school grades this year, okay.
I just have a question. I'm grateful for the decision tree. It's a really, really good idea for teachers to have an outline when they don't know what to do with reading. It's so very, very complicated. I do not think I was a good reading teacher until about year 12. Honestly, the first 3 years, I just kind of threw in the trash can year after year. It's if you've never tried to bridge that point where a student goes from illiterate to literate, it's very difficult. So I guess my biggest concern is teachers. We have a decision tree. As you know, I know the ladies in the back over there understand what I'm about to say. The more individualized you get, the more intensive, massive workload is on a teacher. When we're talking about elementary school, you might have a kid maybe grade 1 through grade 3 in the same class. But when you're moving up the chain, literally in high school, as a literature English teacher, I could have a grade 2 reader and a grade 12 reader in the same class. So when we're talking about the decision tree, how much conversation has been, I guess, about this intensive workload to individualize instruction for 25 kids at a time?
So I will tell you that these three ladies, in addition to a few others, we are almost on a daily basis having conversations really structured around like our multi-tiered level of supports here in the district. And really, when you think about the multitude of different components that we now have embedded, if we can get it right, like as Ms. Gilhausen said, it's going to take a little bit of time, but like our goal is really about daily communication about what are the supports and professional development that we can provide to work on building those capacities.
Because there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah, there's only, absolutely,
absolutely.
And Ms. Kidwell and I have had a lot of conversations when we've had conversations about like the impact on teachers in the classroom. We recognize that this is a huge shift, and we're trying to do our due diligence to ensure that the resources that we provide can give bite-sized, manageable professional development for teachers in how to provide reading instruction in the classroom. But it is going to take time. I mean, I would say that we leverage all of our literacy specialists and coaches to be in classrooms supporting, not just teachers, but leaders to lead that work. And that's part of the work as we move forward as well. When you look at the reading plan, one of the requirements is that the school-based leadership needs to be having a literacy leadership team that is analyzing and having conversations about literacy in the classrooms and looking at student data and determining, like, are things, do teachers, like, there's some teachers who that will pick up these skills naturally, and there's others that are going to need additional support. So using classroom walkthroughs to support that work. Having more dialogue with teachers to ensure that they're getting the right materials. Like one of the powerful components is the professional development that we're trying to provide. One of the things is the letters course, which is a phenomenal. I have the reading endorsement. I taught intensive reading in high school. I taught elementary early literacy. And it's astonishing, how much I didn't know. And so this is one of the, I'm halfway through. It's a slow and arduous, trying to find time. But like, I felt that it was critical as a leader in this work that I would need to be able to help facilitate that. So we're offering a lot of professional development opportunities for teachers as well. But what you bring up is a very important
Because
point.
I had all the training in the world, went and got 2 masters, I practiced for 20 years. It didn't help me in the classroom because I was one person with 20 different reading levels. It doesn't matter how much resources you give a teacher if there's no time to help the students individually like that. So for me, it's not you're doing a great job with like resources and data, but how do we help the teachers actually be able?
I can speak to that because I was, in essence, thrown into a situation where I had to teach reading. I had to be self-inclusive for all of the programs in 5th grade. I'd just been teaching math and science for years. And all of a sudden I was like faced with, okay, you're gonna be the only teacher for these kids. And I had to do the reading. And one of the learning curves, and this was a number of years ago, was that small group instruction. And and working with other teachers and being given the opportunity to go in and observe how does small group instruction really work in a reading environment versus a math or science environment was phenomenal. And that's the sort of thing that has been really, I believe, being implemented beautifully in a lot of those elementary classrooms where you have the opportunity to sit with that, not 25 students, but those 5 students, or those 3 students. Those 7 students that are really strong need support as well, obviously.
Love it.
But
That's
those
right.
3
See, I
or
wasn't
4
actually talking
students
about
were that.
small group. Lexia.
Yes.
You have individual lessons per child in Lexia. There's worksheets. In 7th grade, you might have to teach what the PH sounds like. I'm talking about the amount of work to help every student, regardless of small group. Even if I had 4 small groups, that's still 4 small groups. So what's your thought about that?
So I think obviously, in addition to that, post-pandemic, we saw students coming in with gaps in achievement across the board. And I think that's the struggle that we're trying to bridge that gap with right now, right? Because we have to respond to those students and their needs. However, one of the things is when we think about MTSS and we think multi-tiered level of supports, we have to strengthen our tier 1 instruction. And that's one of the first conversations that we're having is, what does that strong tier 1 instruction look like in the classroom? We now are providing evidence-based resources to do that work, but it's also like one of the pieces moving forward, again, is how we're going to work around what strong instruction looks like. What is direct, explicit instruction? Because we say those words, but do our teachers really know what scaffolding is and differentiation is? So that's one of the things that proactively we're trying to get, into the hands of teachers moving forward. But when we're looking at like what you're saying right now in the moment is trying to align the supports that we currently have whether, again, in elementary, it looks a little bit different because, we do have some inclusion teachers that push in, we do have some instructional assistants. But again, I think that's part of working collaboratively with school leaders to see what resources and supports they have and how can we help design and make instructional decisions. Because again, you may have 4 students that are in interventions and need separate lessons, but are some of those lessons able to be consolidated and then looked at like, well, if we can go to this skill, we can maybe pull those kids together in a group and try to solidify.
Because in general,
there really isn't an easy answer
right,
to that.
because in general, if it's too much, teachers just don't do it, they teach to the middle. Everybody's not gonna stay till 10 p.m. at night.
That's been the traditional trajectory
Yeah,
that we've seen over the course, throughout my entire career, that's been, and that's part of the dialogue that we've been having and trying to educate ourselves, number one, but number two, how do we articulate that vision moving forward with our teachers and our leaders?
Well, and I think part of the problem has been that we haven't taught explicit phonics tier 1. And so I think,
Phonological awareness.
correct, and being able to identify specifically where the gaps are
Absolutely.
makes it a lot easier for that classroom teacher to then go back and remediate, because you can literally test the phonograms and decide, which ones they know, which ones they don't know, what needs practice, what doesn't. And I've seen parents be used as volunteers to do punctuated practice while the teacher's working with some kids who need some help. So I think there's opportunities, but again, it's year 1. So everybody's going to be a little frustrated as we grow and figure it all out, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
But I think that's what I guess I don't really articulate exactly what I mean, but when I say like small group or extra assistants or instructional assistants, whichever, I know hearing from several teachers, that is their biggest concern, is being able to focus on the kids that need the extra help or the shift, and not being able to do it because there's one, not enough time, or 2, they're unable to in the classroom. So I guess that is what I'm referring to.
because if you really want to improve reading,
Well, they're not
get
able
them
to
some help.
utilize a small group and the way that it's designed to do because of all the chaos. So that's what I think their concern is, and wanting that extra help support, whether it's a parent, whether it's.
And I will tell you, that's been, like I said, as we focus on our tier 1 instruction and we look at the resources, but like I said, the other component was master scheduling and guiding leaders. Like we revamped the whole way that we looked at that, and like the scoping sequence of lessons in instruction for reading, but it was also like, how could we customize and design reading blocks that could support the learners in the classroom, because the truth of the matter is we are growing exponentially, and we are getting students from all over the country that are coming in that were in virtual learning for 2 years, and they have significant gaps. So no matter what, we have to respond, and so we're going to work proactively as best as we can, but like we need to ensure that every student can be a literate citizen. So I think it's bridging that gap.
Ms. Tito, are we still leveling classes through math?
Are we leveling that?
When I was teaching, they would put all your 4 and 5 math together,
So
which really messed up the language arts.
I will say that when we.
Because you could be a 5 in math and a 1 in reading.
We try to work through creating homogeneous group, like just groups that encompass all types of students to ensure that there's a balance of support, because we know that if we have what a quote-unquote inclusion classroom and it's really technically 20 students with an IEP and a 2 that maybe don't, is that really going to give all those students the opportunity to be exposed to grade level content and grade level expectations? Probably not.
Okay, so I'll transition to the next one. Okay, it's the notice to advertise, the code of conduct. If you recall, in previous board workshop, we talked about some of the items within the code of student conduct to gain some input from board members. We traditionally work on this for many months to get to that point. It comes to the board traditionally in May to advertise, gets approved by the board in June, so they've got enough time in order to do summer training for the changes that occur, and it's ready, it's active, and all those kinds of things from August. So there was really 3 items that board members, were concerned about or wanted to be involved in. It was dress code, cell phones, and student use of the restroom. We had that discussion.
And I just have one thing before you flip a page when you're done. Yeah, on the dress code.
Okay, sure. So wait, I just want to say that we felt like we tried to reflect what the board had said.
You did better, yeah.
Through consensus, but we might, if there's more discussion that needs to be.
No, it's not a discussion, it's gonna be a bullet point.
Okay.
Yeah, so if, I don't know if the board has read, under all students, it says students may not use their electronic devices during instructional time for any reason, period, lowercase, educational purposes, when, if no school issue technology is available, comma, it is sanctioned by school administrator. This is a really, really complicated paragraph, so I've shortened it for us. I think the word sanctioned by an administrator makes principals feel teachers would make them feel kind of like a little bit weird, that wording. So this is a bullet point to see if the board agrees, so we could simplify this statement by saying, students may not use their electronic devices during instructional time unless school-issued technology is not available. The device could be used under the guidance of classroom teachers for educational purposes. The reason I wanted to change it to a more simplified statement is because what if a science teacher doing science fair, needs to record a chain reaction of something? The students, especially in secondary, use their phones. The teachers teach them how to use Google Calendar, how to set reminders. In science, you use it quite often. You collect data that way. Talk to it as you're doing a science fair experiment. I didn't work a lot with math, but I feel like we don't really need the principal to give a teacher sanction. But does the board agree with that more precise language that would allow secondary teachers to use the phone in an educational manner? Because there are other things they use phones for.
They're
Yeah.
like the students?
Yeah, because if you're doing a science experiment, for instance, if you need to record that and then go back home and measure how much time it took, or data, I use them for that purpose in science.
But what about the students who don't have cell phones?
It has nothing to do with that.
Where are you at? I thought that's what we were talking about.
No, this has nothing to do with that. It's
Sorry.
just giving teachers the responsibility to make a decision, an educational decision, that if we say absolutely not. When I taught inclusion, I actually taught the kids how to use their phones to schedule reminders at night to do their homework.
So I think the reason why the language was a little bit stronger was because I think the board was trying to indicate that you didn't want it to be used for inappropriate purposes during the
Right,
instruction.
that would not be inappropriate though.
I
Okay,
would
hold on a
personally
second.
prefer having the oversight of the administrator on that decision because
Just because
There-
it
yeah.
sounds like the board wants us to clamp down on that, right? So we want to clamp down on it.
Well, no, not with this language though. Be sanctioned by an administrator. It just doesn't.
About administrative approval?
Well, why would you need that if you're just having a kid put a date in for a test? In high school, this is what you do at the end of class.
but what
Especially
we're
your
saying
ESE
is we're
kids.
gonna do things differently.
Page
The whole
22.
point of tightening up on cell phone use was that we're doing things differently.
Well, and
So-
also the sentence isn't grammatically correct. It's just too long. We've got periods and commas in the wrong place. Really, so what you guys are saying, you want to just tell teachers they can't use it to collect data during a science fair
I
or
wanna
during a
say
lab?
that I like this language because I think if a teacher has a specific use that they need those cell phones for, then they can get the administrative approval, and that way you have administration aware that cell phones are being used in that classroom. And so if maybe we need to do a walkthrough from time to time to make sure cell
Well,
phones
what
are
if
being
there's a
used
technology,
appropriately.
Chromebooks are available is what I'm talking about. It says that they're available, you're not allowed to use it at all. So if you want a kid to pull their phone out and record their science fair experiment, according to this language, they can't do that because there is a Chromebook available, but they don't take pictures.
Well, then you just ask the principal. Because
No, but the language says you can never use it if there's a Chromebook available.
One of the considerations was that there is proposed legislation right now, working through the state legislature that uses that language. And so part of the reason was we felt like the stronger language comported with the proposed legislation that's moving through the state right now. And I'm gonna,
Well, they're gonna do it anyway if they have to record something.
just to read the language, it says such rules, and this comes after the statement that school districts are required to create rules against the use of cell phones in the classroom. It says such rules must prohibit the use of wireless communication devices during instructional time.
Yeah,
So we felt like the stronger language would comport better with the
well,
The
we don't need to say
legislation.
sanctioned by an administrator, right?
there's some latitude in the,
And also, we just need to correct it then because it's not grammatically correct, so it doesn't read right.
So would we, if we used.
I still
approval,
said not, and, you know, I'm just rewording it to make
or
it
approval instead
make
of
more
sanction?
sense.
It is approved by school administration.
I mean, it's up to
and
you
under the
guys.
guidance of
I
the-
just know they're gonna use them anyway to record a science fair experiment.
I don't have any problems with this one. I
mean, if
read it
it-
and read it again and I'm like,
If it needs to be recorded for student use,
Mm-hmm.
then
That's
there is
under-
a teacher who has the ability to record it and distribute that recording as they need to.
On Google.
There's ways to do it so that it stays on our servers, on our devices, without it, I just don't see the need for
Because then
it.
you're gonna have that one teacher that's very laxed, that's like, oh, well,
I just feel like we're
don't really get to use
micromanaging
cell phones
teachers.
all day today.
It's okay. You guys disagree, it's
Well,
fine.
I don't think that
It's a
it's
mute point.
necessarily managing teachers, because like we said, there's little ways that you can put that information out there if you need it, but ultimately, you know, you give them, not the teachers, but you give these students an inch, and they're gonna take a mile, you know, they're gonna,
I think the goal is to shift the culture, and
yeah.
I think to do that, there have to be very clear boundaries. And so when we get to a point of, well, I'm gonna continue to use them in my class, but Mr. So-and-so down the hall doesn't allow them at all, then you have what students will see as an unfair
Yes.
implementation of a new rule. And you're gonna get a lot of frustrated parents.
Well, then just
a
fix
lot
the
of-
grammar and just keep it like
And
it is.
ultimately, it does support teachers, because what about those teachers who do want to implement this policy with fidelity? They're not being supported when, you know, there's another teacher who's not also implementing.
No, I understand all that.
and they have,
Is
and,
there, so fixing the grammar then?
Well,
Okay.
yes, it doesn't make sense. It says students may not use their electronic device during any instructional time for any reason, period. And there's, if no school-issued technology is available, it is sanctioned by school administrator. I mean, so we just, I mean, I guess you just keep it like that then.
we can attempt to clarify the language a bit. Those three things that go comma to comma to comma are clauses. So those three
I
criteria.
mean, I
would be
understand the
fulfilled.
language and why you wrote it that way. I also understand that if we need to use it for educational purposes, they're probably going to do it anyway, and it's not going on TikTok, you know? So,
Was there any other items, so you're gonna work to clarify?
Yes, sir.
Any other items in the code of conduct section? Okay.
I thought you
So-
said you had something under dress code.
huh?
Didn't you say you had something under dress code that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, if you guys have no problems with it, then I don't, if no one else wants to talk about it, so I'm fine.
Okay. We tried to take whatever was said, whatever the consensus was, and convert it into the word.
I just have to get better at keeping notes about what we say, so.
Okay, proclamation of Mental Health Month in May. Proposed allocation changes, you'll see that basically there's no cost there for this year. For the next year, no cost either related to staff allocations. Next is the monthly financial reports, followed by the budget amendments. Then the payroll calendar. The Florida Youth Challenge. Deletion of certain items. Bid renewal for custodial services and ramp systems. And the awardings to Great Faith and to Leesburg and Holbrook. Next is the bid awards for the exterior door replacements, the digital marquees, and the fencing. And the companies are listed there. That's pretty standard. Next is the vendor agreement for the Bailey Group to be our third-party administrator. I'm very proud that this is the first year that I can remember where the premiums went down. It was a little over $250,000, so the self-funded portion of that is doing well. And really, I was at a conference of superintendents who were talking about budgets, like, okay, what are the areas that you can actually impact or affect when it comes to finances within the district? And two areas that are big areas of opportunity are energy consumption, because the cost of energy for 6.7 million square feet of air-conditioned space is a lot. And the second is through your insurance program. We finally have robust programs in both of those areas. Next is the appointment of the Citizens Oversight Committee. It looks like, if I'm reading it right, it looks like there's 4 name changes to this from previous time. Each board member has 3, and then the superintendent has 2. And they're actually meeting today, by the way, is their meeting. And they've done a great job at monitoring that. Pre-qualification of contractors, that's pretty standard. Next is the change order for the Keystone Heights cafeteria and room expansion out there. It's looking beautiful. It was out there a couple weeks ago. Next is the grant for the non-exclusive right-of-way easement to Clay Cooperative for Keystone Heights Elementary. That's followed by the change order for the roof repair at Orange Park Elementary for buildings 3, 5, and 7, which are all flat roofs. The challenge is, I think Orange Park Elementary, 96 years old. Did I get that right? I think it's 96 years old. It's on the historical marker. Great. Next, we have the renovation of Clay High School's locker room and gym.
Is that our oldest building?
I think it is our oldest building, actually.
We should plan a centennial event. That would be fun.
That'd be awesome. And I know that 96 is 96, and as we get older, we attempt to fix things, and I'm not even going there.
Sometimes we need more fixing as we get older.
Yes, and it becomes harder to fix, by the way.
Yes, true that.
Okay, Lakeside Junior High School renovation, restroom renovation. Next is the conveyance of the area in front of Spring Park Elementary. If you remember last time, Peters Creek Investment gave it to the district, and now the district is giving it to the Board of County Commissioners so that they can complete their work.
And, oh my, I got the nicest compliment the other day. A former student's son is going to be going to Spring Park. And she was so excited to tell me that the letters are on the building now, and there's a sign out front, and everything's going so well, and we're so excited. And I was just thought, oh.
Do we have a day that it's gonna be like we're finished today?
A final completion date, yeah, we'll get that, we can get that to you. It'll be May, June.
Oh, really? That's it? Wow.
Yes.
Well, I just drove by there and they didn't even have a parking lot yet, so.
They were laying sod, this week.
Okay.
Paving today.
Wow.
So you'll see
Just amazing.
big opportunities.
We'll have a ribbon cutting.
Of course, we'll have a celebration at some point after it's
There's a video.
complete.
I think we should have Spring Park Coffee cater that.
Yes.
My favorite.
So I'm
With
going
her
to
small
knock on
picture.
wood, proud the timeline will actually be able to take over the building in enough time to get ready. You know, when we did Discovery Oaks, there was a 2-week barrage,
Oh, wow.
you know,
Yeah.
right before school to kind of get everything in there and get it set up and get it ready. So I feel like this time we're on schedule as far as timing goes. I would be, there's no other discovery discussion items, but I'd be remiss if I didn't, point out that Clay Day was a huge success, but I will tell you that I do have concerned about certain legislation that's out there, and I want to make sure that I just kind of express this to the board, that the board can't say they never heard this, okay? Right now, there's legislation that's titled HB 239, and increases FRS for all classification. The cost, if it goes through for Clay County Schools, is $14.2 million. If that goes through, I tried to talk to anybody that would listen to me, including the people that were serving drinks and water and stuff at Clay Day. Anybody that would listen, I told them my plight about FRS and the potential financial impact on this district. Of course, right now, they're in budget right now.
They're increasing the district's
The
contribution.
districts,
Yes.
the
So
district-
it'll be less of a contribution by the state.
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, they're trying to recoup many years of lower COLA for people that were in the system previously, and then of course, this is my version of it, they're putting that on the backs of districts at a huge cost. So once again, the total cost to the district is $4.2 million. That's roughly the amount in your total unreserved fund balance, if that gives you an idea.
Do we know where it's at in legislation?
Uh,
Or like, has it passed
It's-
Senate, has it passed anything?
It hasn't passed anything. They're having budget conference this week, and so that's kind of where we're at with that one. The HB1
Yeah.
has already passed, signed into law, so the question is, there's two different versions, the House version and the Senate version are radically different. The board, through analysis by Dr. Leducco and her crew, like which one would be better for us, would be the House version, which lists vouchers below the FEFP line. In other words, one of the challenges is that the cost or the number of people that would take advantage of such programs is unknown. There's no way to know that information. So if it's below the line, if it's below the FEFP, it's separated out and not part of our budget, and therefore it doesn't have the financial impact on our budget. So empowerment scholarships in previous years, in rough numbers, Doc would probably give it to you in more precise numbering, but it was 2 million, went to 10 million, now we're estimating 15 to 17 million would be the cost of that, which, in my view, whatever the legislature, does is that they're the legislature, we get to do that. What I would like is to not have it impact our budget so that we would know what our budget is, so that we can plan properly and accordingly. The difference between the two is roughly about 15 million in the advantage to the district in comparison between the Senate and the House version of events. You know that Tallahassee and the legislature's a compromise, so I would imagine the Senate and the House are going to get together, and there'll be something in between those two groups. We don't know what that is.
So,
Also-
Mr. Bresky, how do they track that? So, like, when we get FEFP, we don't get it till the end of the year.
Right. So
We have to do attendance. So,
So
for these students,
the big challenge would be, because this is never happens. This is not like a routine year where there's the ups and downs of the budgetary process. We don't know, because this is a first of its kind, right? So the challenge is you get paid based on the students that show up. That's measured in October.
so could we not have some sort of local policy that if you're applying for a voucher, then on this day, you need to report to the district? And on this day,
There'll
it's your
be-
child, and
There'll
it's a
be state
registration thing.
rules, and I think the state is going to determine that for us.
How they register with the district.
So,
So,
Mr.
but there will
Brodsky-
be a mechanism so that they're registered, so that we get the
There will
funding
be
from the
there will be
state?
an end date to it, yeah.
The military does this very, very effectively, but through homeroom teachers, they put, I think I mentioned it to Dr. Legesco about intent. It's a letter of intent. So you just send it home, homeroom teachers collect it. If you can get back 20%, that's a good sampling. But it roughly says the intentions of where you're putting your child in school next year. And it gives you an approximate number, because military communities move all the time, and so the only way they can plan is to try to figure out that percentage. but it's a simple form. It just says, oh, my child's going to attend high school at Fleming Island, or, oh, they're going to go to a charter school, or it's just like a blank line, the intention of placement of your child next year. It would be a good tool for our CFO to have an idea, maybe at least about the percentages, and how they're going to change. It's a simple thing to do.
Do we use School Mint in the district?
Do we use what?
School Mint, a program that tracks all the student data? Or do we just use
Use synergy.
Synergy is the only one? So is there not a mechanism there where you could,
Well, the challenge of the legislation is that students that currently attend private school
We have no access.
can then go ahead and do that.
so they don't have access to Synergy?
Well, you don't know how many are in private schools. So
Or homeschool.
Right.
Or homeschool. So the theory would be that there's only so many spaces or spots for people to go. So it'd be impossible to measure that.
Right.
What we want is clear and transparent budgeting so that they tell us, like, if it's below the line, like in the House version, that gives us a clearer process by which to do that. And so we're kind of pushing for that to occur. We realize the legislature has the option, the authority to do whatever they want to do. We just want to know what our budget is, and we can't determine that.
I guess my question is there an opportunity for us to create a local or procedure to implement that policy that would be helpful in planning?
We can look to do that, but it'll be spelled out in the legislation what they're gonna say, that we can't, do anything that counteracts their.
Oh, right, no, I realize
Which
that.
will probably build into a procedure for us, I'm assuming.
I don't know, sometimes we get mandates and then it's, create a policy to implement this mandate.
Exactly.
So I'm just wondering if that's going to be the
And
process
within these
here.
parameters.
And if we're setting our budget in July, then we would
I
need a
don't think this
policy
is a-
sooner than later.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just
I feel
thinking
they're very
timeline.
specific about the HB1 and what they
Yes.
want and all the details on it. Because that was
They have to apply starting
And there's
July
also a
1st.
certain amount of money available.
I'm just
There's an
thinking for
actual
planning
income.
purposes.
right. No, I get what you're saying, because I was wondering how receptive they were to knowing, like, where the voucher bypassed us and went directly to them. I was wondering if they were receptive.
Well, it always has, like with the Hope Scholarship.
You know,
You apply for
the
it.
House side had that.
Which we have.
Yeah, we've always
Their
had.
version of it. How it comes out of committee, we don't know, it's unknown. We would obviously prefer that, because they certainly have the right to give money to whoever they want to give money to. We would just prefer to not be the people that track their giving of money to other folks. Let them
Could
give it
they not
directly
do
to those
that?
people.
I'm thinking like, for example, the VPK program is done through the Department of Children and Families. That you get your money from the state directly to enroll your child wherever you'd like to for
So
VPK,
our
but this is
current
different.
empowerment scholarships, which, total well over $10 million now, come to the district, and then the district manages the money that's given out to others.
I just don't understand why they wouldn't follow a procedure that they already have in place with.
So why did it step up?
It's just
I thought
state
they
funds
just
too, not federal.
Distribute money.
Goes to the district, and the district disperses it.
Okay.
Because
And then if it
VPK
costs us
essentially is
more,
a
we have
voucher.
to-
That is a voucher that you take to, you can go private, you can
Yes.
go public, you can go anywhere you'd like to, and take your state money for VPK with you. And that's all managed by, it's DCF, right? Or is it Department of Early Learning? I can't
So I just want to put it out there. I know that we don't have control over that, but just wanted to make people aware of that. And in addition, remember we have 3 appropriations that we put in for. There are 2 that are still alive, that have made it out and will be fully funded if approved by the governor and not vetoed by the governor in line item vetoes after the budget's passed. One is workforce development, that's the Health Care Academy at Fleming Island High School. And the second is the Elevation Academy expansion. Both of those are being funded now and are at that point. Doesn't guarantee anything because the funding still has to come through, the governor still has to approve it. But 2 out of 3 are still alive.
So not the Montessori expansion?
No,
Bummer.
that was cut.
Bummer.
Okay, that's it for this. So I'll turn it back over to you. And just as a reminder, we want Ms. Troutman to give
Right.
some explanation. of
Right. All right, so I'll start with board member comment. I believe, let me pull up my agenda, make sure I'm going in order here. I was on the May agenda, give me one moment. Okay, so Mr. Superintendent is done, so we'll start with school board attorney comments. Mr. Bittner?
Nothing.
Nothing from you? Ms. Bola, would you like to start?
I
board
just
member?
wanted to remind everyone, we got the trim notice at the last meeting, and when we start dealing with budget questions, last year, I think the date was July 21st, and this year it's gonna be July 25th, but for those of you who've not been through that process yet, it is an ideal opportunity for Doc Legutko to literally go line by line in our budget. So we see exactly where everything is, and she will repeat 100 million times, this is a fluid budget. This is not just today. This is fluid. We will be moving this. A reminder that Thursday night is the Spring into Education program with the Clay Education Foundation. It's going to be at Tucker Farms, I think it's called. Should be a good evening. And the last thing, I know the Golden Hammer Award was sent out as an invitation to all of us, which is in May, if I'm not mistaken. They're asking us to respond. If you haven't responded, please at least RSVP that you're not able to attend, so they know they have account for breakfast at the Hilltop. Excellent award, and it's just fun seeing our students be rewarded for construction, electrical, and a variety of other things.
What was the
breakfast.
Clay Foundation thing that you just said?
It's at Tucker Farms, Thursday night from 6 until 9, if I'm not mistaken. That's behind Garber Automotive, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
is, yeah.
That's
This
it?
Thursday, you said?
Mm-hmm, yes.
All right, Ms. Hanson?
Go to the Clay Education Foundation website for the information.
I've been kind of out of the loop, haven't been to many things. Had to attend to my medical situation with my arm, which was a freak accident. So I have not really visited anything. I'm excited about my first graduation coming up. I'm really excited about the athletics award show that's coming up. I wonder how we talk for 4 hours, but I guess we'll figure it out, right?
Oh,
Is
you
it-
call
are
it
you
an
a
award
4-hour
show, but it's a pep rally.
It's like a pep rally?
It's a
Oh,
giant,
it's a
all-night
pep
pep rally.
Strap in.
Strap, literally strap.
What's the dress?
I was like, 4 hours.
It's
You have to wear your basketball.
semi-formal, so I think.
Cheerleading outfits for the past.
Yes.
And the only other thing, I was wondering if we could get a calendar. So for instance, the in-service manual and the reading came up just now together. Total was over 400 pages of reading. We know that things show up at the same time every year. So I was wondering if we could get maybe documents a little earlier than 4 days prior, because there was no way that I could read it and ask questions of anyone. If I can't get through it until Friday, then we had the weekend. So what I'm saying is, since we know that things come up, can the board get a calendar about what's gonna be
Yearly
on?
calendar, what
Yeah,
typically
what's
comes up.
coming, because that 400 was too much for
We
me.
can do that.
We'll know ahead of time, oh, the reading thing's coming up next month,
Well, and the reading thing was new this year, but like the
Yeah,
master
but,
in-service
as an
plan is something that
example,
comes every year. And so those documents are always
So
available
so
as
next
they.
month will be student progression plan,
Yeah,
so that's
Yeah.
a big one that's coming up.
so if I knew ahead of time, you could just peek around and,
It's out there now, yeah.
come up with good questions or not.
Yeah.
For
That's
example,
the
Mr.
cool thing, they're all out
Brodsky, as
there,
a
so.
board member, if I wanted to go and look at the April agenda from 2021, I could do that. You just
Yeah.
pull it up in Agenda
Yeah.
Plus, and you'll find a lot of those annual documents and contracts on that month's agenda. So if you're wanting to prepare now for May, then you could go ahead and go to the May agenda from last year, a year before, and see those documents
But
there.
the changes would only come on Thursday
I'll come-
before?
Yeah,
The
typically
changes-
it's gonna happen the Thursday prior to the board workshop.
She wants
You're gonna
to
see those
do
changes.
what she said.
The
But I can come
the
up with a
document as
calendar
it
in
sits
writing.
is available sooner, but the changes may not be.
Yeah,
And the changes are usually,
And there's usually a change page,
Right.
which is kind of like a shortened version of what the changes are. There's a 1 or 2 page document at the front of each one of them that says, here are the changes that we made. To
Does that make sense? And I think your idea about a calendar is fantastic, so just to,
I'll take
Just
care of that.
enough,
Yeah.
enough.
And if anything's new, you knew the reading was gonna come up, you know, we could just know about it ahead of
Yep.
time.
We should do that.
just like we have an events calendar, we can have a documents calendar.
Yeah, yeah. That's it for me.
Is that it for you? All right, Ms. Skipper.
Our play day was a blast. Very fun, very good to build relationships. Aside from that, I'm done.
Oh, that's it. I
Sorry,
couldn't hear you.
I don't have nothing.
And Ms. Clark,
Well, I talked so much during the meeting, I'm gonna keep it.
you've been quiet. Quiet, like a little mouse.
But, yeah, Play Day is great. You get to interface with people that you don't, whether they're from Green Cove or wherever that you don't get to see very often. I think more fun is going to the CTE event in Millbrook High. Taking the time to go through each of those classrooms, even the electrical part, not realizing they had the capability to do a whole house. So, that was great.
Ms. Skipper, did you check out those dummies in the healthcare room?
So, no, I have an objection to this. I've already spoken to them about this. I think that we need the computer-based electronic dummies. And I put my 2 cents in as a registered nurse. We had those for nursing school, and they're real life. The teacher can sit there and type what they want them to say, if they're hurting, increase their heart rate. Like, it's a true life monitor. And it prepares them, because what people don't realize is that CNA is also the person who comes in and does compressions while the nurses are working and starting lines and pushing meds and stuff like that. But not only that, I express this concern too, is the training that needs to happen on a teacher side of it, because it's only as good as the teacher can use it. We had to change it up in nursing school a little bit, because one of the teachers wasn't very knowledgeable about the program, so it wasn't until a few classes later that we were able to fully get the full benefits of it. But it is exceptional, and it's real life. I mean, you could do anything and everything on this mannequin. So.
You know, I hadn't thought about it before, but there might be an opportunity for partnership with our colleges of nursing in the area when they're retiring their equipment and renewing it, that we might be able to.
That is for other stuff. I was going to say those computer mannequins are fairly new, and they're like fighting over themselves. So.
I doubt we'd be able to get that for a CNA program if they're a hot ticket item for a nursing program.
But they're
But one day they'll need
whether
to
one
replace
school
them.
has one, you know, and you do small group and without one, very, very educational around life scenarios. So,
Do we-
even the EKG classes.
Do they do any kind of field trips to the nursing colleges?
I don't know.
Includes that, the appropriation that's still alive, to include money to do that. That's part of it.
Do they do field trips to nursing colleges?
I don't know about that, but the future plan would be to have a partnership right there with Baptist, so that you can just, students could walk.
I know they go to Orange Park High, or Orange Park Elementary. The hospital.
Right. The colleges, or it's a little different.
Yeah.
I think it just would be neat for them to see a college of nursing classroom and,
UNF made, and FSCJ.
St. John's
Yep.
has
St. John's has a nursing program too.
as well.
Yeah.
And that's, but yeah,
Right,
that
right,
would be
that's what I meant, yeah.
because going and seeing the equipment, what you get.
All right, sorry, we're chasing rabbits. Miss Trotman
There
stepped
was a
out.
visit.
She's the candidates here, so you'll have to find another location. I don't see that anymore.
I have nothing further, but I know you said Ms. Trotman needed to brief us real quick.
My phone's fixed.
So why don't we do this? I'll attempt to give some briefing until Ms. Troutman comes back.
Okay.
If you take a look at your packet, inside the green folder, you can see who's going to be here. We did have a shift in schedule because Mr. Thibault was ordered by the judge to be there this afternoon, so it switches time frame. So we're gonna start right off with you at 10:30 with him, and you got to see that there is lunch built in. It's a short lunch time frame of a half an hour. We will provide that food, so that food will be delivered here, so it'll be sequestered here for the entire time. All right, go ahead.
Okay, all right, so each of you have a packet with the questions, and there's a rubric at the top for you to score the questions. I'm gonna give you a real quick version of the rubric. A 5 means they're excellent, they're over the top, okay? But you'll have a few moments to read the details of that rubric. A 4 means they really impressed you, okay? 3 is they're on target, okay? They're not great, but they're not below. And then, of course, you have the 2, and a 1 just they totally bomb. All right, so they just have to totally bomb to be the 1. So that's the quick, because I want us to stay on time, of the rubric. If you have any questions, we'll definitely go over it. If you look at one of the interview sections, there's like the last 3 questions. They're more for you just to give them a grade. You'll have a copy of each resume. So you'll score their resume, score how they did in the interview. Did they articulate well? Did they present well? So there's 3 things for just your personal impression of them on that, okay? At the end of each interview, if you want, I can add your scores up, or you can add them up, because at the very back there is a total score, okay? I have a spreadsheet that Ms. Muma has created for me that I will keep a tally of the scores, so that at the end of the 4 interviews, I can tell you how much each one scored, what was their total from the 5 of you, okay? Remember, all conversations are recorded, even in between the candidates. The camera will never stop rolling, so everything you say is going to be heard. So just keep that in mind. When we go to lunch, you cannot speak of the candidates, okay? You can talk about Clay Day, you can talk about graduation coming up and what school you're going to, but we can't talk about the candidates during lunch, all right? And we'll set lunch up in the back room. So there's a special item on the new, because what we're gonna do is start a new meeting, okay? There's the special board meeting for the interviews. And there's been an action placed on the agenda that will allow the board to direct Mr. Brodsky and Board Chair Ms. Gilhousen to enter into employment contract negotiations if you select a candidate today, okay? So if you select a candidate today, you can actually make that motion to proceed with that if you choose. Ms. Gilhousen will then contact the candidate and let the candidate know that y'all are going to start entering into contract negotiations.
Now, we do that all live?
Yes. Just like you vote on things at a board meeting.
But she doesn't, it's not live when she enters contract
Oh, no.
negotiations.
No, I would contact them via phone,
Oh,
not during a
correct.
meeting.
No, but you make your
Right.
decision.
They would know.
We make our decision live.
No, you have to do it
Make their
like,
decisions.
no, that would be like, yes. What TV show was that where they call them live and say, yes?
For a second.
Or one of those where you pick your spouse on TV. So the superintendent,
3 minutes per question.
Yeah, go.
yes. So about 3 minutes per question. Remember to also at the very beginning, Ms. Gilhousen, if you will start and introduce yourself,
Sure.
okay? I will introduce the candidate,
Okay.
and then you should go round robin on your questions,
Okay.
okay?
that's what my
So
question
each person will go round robin, so we'll start with you and then we'll just go around. But introduce yourselves at the beginning, let them know who you are. That way they feel more comfortable. Also, if you would let them know that at any point in time, if they need a question repeated, to feel free to say, can you repeat that question? Because we want to make sure they understand so they can answer you clearly. And then try to keep them short and brief on the questions,
Are you gonna tell them max 3 minutes?
Yeah, I was gonna say it.
Yes.
Okay,
Step out.
okay.
To keep through that. So then, if you select one today and then they agree to go into it, that's where y'all will begin to negotiate the employment contract. The superintendent, Ms. Gilhousen, that's your responsibility to do that. There is no predetermined time frame for that. You know, sometimes negotiations go more quickly than other times, and that's entirely dependent on the attorney candidate, the superintendent, and the board chair to finalize the contract. Once you finalize the contract, then it'll be placed on the next board agenda for the entire board to vote on whether or not you accept the contract or not. Miss Bonnie will place that and take care of that. So, and then at that time, once y'all vote at that board meeting, you know, we will invite the attorney. Y'all can actually sign the contract right then and there if you so choose to do that. Okay? That's real quick. What did I, so that will be
Sir, I
on
would,
10:30.
I'm recommending to the board that Mr. Bickner come back at 2:45 for the very end discussion in case there's a question about the process,
Right.
to make sure that we have the proper process at the end of this thing, when you guys are talking about the decision.
Sounds
Is
good.
the board in agreement?
Does anyone have any questions on the packet or the process? Because I went through it real fast, but like I said, I'd like to keep you on time.
Can we do a back?
Do a quick.
Yes. All right, so
And
should I adjourn?
our first candidate is here. He will sit right here.
Do I adjourn the workshop?
Does she need to gavel this for the specific?
I don't declare the workshop, right? Adjourn?
Don't worry, I will have you in a hard copy.